Hello, Janice.
Hey Marco, how are you doing?
I'm getting you. How's everything today?
I'm doing awesome, thank you. It's a beautiful day here, so enjoying it.
Yeah, beautiful time of year. Love the fall, the leaves, the change in season, changing clothes as well. It's always nice to put on different types of things than a t-shirt and a pair of shorts. So just don't enjoy the winter that's coming our way, but you know what? We'll deal with it when we get there. I'm really excited about our conversation this afternoon. Are you?
So excited, and it's really timely, and it's really going to energize everybody, I think, as we go forward. So it's really going to be a fun one, and we're going to have a lot to talk about today.
Yeah, we definitely had some really good topics over the course of the year. Like every month, we're putting on a webinar with different content and stuff. And I like this one because, really, understanding, the role of the MSP, the talk tracks that they're having with their customers. Back in the day when we had our MSP, our vCIOs, I think it's a fair statement to say that they struggled with trying to establish value with our customers, right?
Oh, 100%. Because I mean, when you're presenting month over month or quarterly, depending on your cadence with your customer, sometimes it's a stretch, right? To how do we make it interesting, intuitive, get everybody involved? And I think through the evolution here, that's where we have to recharge things, right? We can never ever stay stagnant. And that's what I love about this. And absolutely, if we had had this back in the day, like what excitement we would have had with it, just the depth and the breadth of what's available now to us today.
Yeah, it's definitely the industry has changed, that's for sure.
Mm.
When you think of, all different applications on a network and AI playing such a prominent role in business today, we talk to, lots of MSPs every month, and we hear the same thing over and over. It's how are we showing value to our customers, especially with all these new solutions that are out there, and then also how do we keep them secure? And I hope what people will see today in terms of what Produce8 is really a great platform that they can actually start delivering really important features and data and information around not only technology, but people and processes and how they utilize technology and the impact of technology. So what we're going to do today is we'll definitely have a nice conversation, you and I, and then I'll take everybody into our UI and we'll show them the executive summary report that our partners are actually delivering to their customers in a real amazing way in terms of how they're differentiating themselves in the marketplace. And this is really about being more strategic in terms of, your vCIO strategy and your QBR strategy that they're having with their customers and how they need to evolve. And we've been talking about the commoditization in the MSP space and the evolution that's taking forth right now. And so I hope that we have a lot of people that are on the webinar today, and I really hope that they really kind of see this as a great way and a great opportunity for them to really kind of address what I feel and so many of us, we've been hearing it like in the industry today. You take a look at Chris Day over at ScalePad. He's talking about the critical importance of QBRs today and what we need to do to start driving more strategic conversations with our customers, but we know that they're on the decline. I know that, for instance, I used to challenge our VCIOs back at Fully Managed in the old days to making sure that they're getting in front of our customers. And time again, they used to kind of come back to us and say, like, we don't necessarily want to do it anymore, or our customers are continuing canceling, the appointments that we have. And I could never understand why. But now being on the side of Produce8 and understanding what we bring to the table, it totally makes sense, right? Where the old conversation that MSPs are having with their customers is not good enough anymore. And, there's so much pressure right now in terms of margin pressure on contracts that the MSPs have. We start seeing them that some of them actually don't want to get in front of their customers because they feel there's a cost associated with getting somebody out there and spending a little bit of time. And then I think the biggest problem that they're seeing is there not enough value. There's not enough business maybe coming back to them. And I think, it's not only the delivery, but it's the message. I think it's getting stagnant. It's getting a little bit old. And so I feel that with Produce8, in terms of what we've brought to the table, it's kind of like a refresh with the QBRs, a refresh with the types of conversations, but having very different conversations. And we'll talk about that as we get into the technology. And when you start seeing some of the technologies out there, whether it's AI and some of the tools that are automatically sending reports into customers on technology that they might be using, MSPs feel that I don't necessarily have to go in and have this conversation with the customer. So I think I think ideally what I see is definitely a change, Janice. I know when we used to have our practice, I think you take a look at, the MSP business today and where it's at or where it was, they are very, very different. And if you're doing the same thing and having the same conversation that you've been having 3 years ago, there's something wrong. And I think what we can do with Produce8 is really enhance those conversations that the MSPs are having with their clients.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. It's just so important. It's so important for your stickiness, maintaining that relationship. It's very competitive out there, right? And so you have to be developing that relationship and going forth. But let's dive in here and we're going to have a little bit of fun today. I'm going to probe Marco here
Oh
with a few
boy.
questions along the way and put him in the hot seat and see how he's going to respond to this. So, Marco, first question here for you. We're looking at this slide. A lot of the MSPs today are still leaning on spreadsheets and ticket counts to tell their story back to the customer. Why do you think it's so important now to actually show the data instead of people just talking about it?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, Janice, and thank you for that. I think when you take a look at it, the old, the traditional, bright gauge report that an MSP is delivering to their clients, while it's a fantastic platform, the customers just assume that the things that you're reporting on that you're doing for them, right? And so, if you're going to go in and have a conversation with your clients about tickets that, you've opened and closed and your speed to answer and any project update, those are what I call normal table stakes that they just assume are happening. And so, you know, the clients, this is why the QBRs aren't working. This is one of the major reasons why, for instance, people are moving away from it, is because there's not enough value. And what I like to say about this is it's not strategic enough with the customer, right? They're not aligning themselves up with the things that matter to them today. Yes, a good project is necessary. All the MSPs need to support that. But when we take a look at the age of AI today and the impact of AI in businesses and technology, if the MSP is not talking about that in terms of what the impact is, I feel that there's a missed opportunity in terms of that, that strategic conversation that they're having with their customer.
Fantastic. So during the pandemic, so many of the QBR reviews, they just kind of faded away. People just weren't having them. What do you think has since changed, and how can the vCIO earn a seat back at that table we're seeing?
Yeah, I think COVID definitely had a big impact, right? And then you get out of COVID and it's business as usual, right? And but business as usual from the standpoint of we're not getting back into our customers, right? Everybody got used to not having to book those QBRs or go in and have the conversation with the customers around, what's happening in the business, because they know, it's like I said in your first question, is the customers are not seeing value. And so I think the conversation has to change. And I think the easiest thing that a vCIO or a technical account manager that's looking after their customers has to be able to explain to their customer that we need to get back into these meetings and the conversation has to change. And when I say conversation has to change is, yes, you can still report on the traditional things that you're doing. But for instance, what about if we went and had a conversation on, for instance, AI and shadow AI and new solutions that have been installed in your environment? Would that be something that, for instance, they would be interested in? Or would they be interested in having a conversation in terms of software reclamation, understanding how the applications that they're paying for are not all being utilized, and there's an opportunity for the MSP to save that customers a little bit of money on a yearly basis? That is a much different conversation than, for instance, how many tickets we're opening and close. Now, I'm generalizing it. I know that some of the QBRs are definitely a little bit more complicated, but I think you get the gist of where I'm trying to come from in terms of changing that conversation and having something that's different than, the MSP down the street that's coming in and trying to attract your customer. You always want to be very strategic with them.
Yeah, absolutely. So, next question here. You often say that the MSP needs to move from being a technician to a conductor, but what does that really look like on a day-to-day out basis? And how does the forecasting of that versus the firefighting change the client experience? What's in it?
Yeah, so when we talk about the MSP being the conductor, it's about really understanding everything that's going on in that business. It's not just an IT play, right? And so you're starting to see that the mature MSPs, as they start delivering information, we'll talk continuously about AI and applications and technology impact. But then the mature MSPs are kind of like migrating the business more in terms of organizational information and people information. And so we start seeing that, like when we talk about knowing everything that's going on, it's really about they don't necessarily have to be experts in all of these things, but as long as the customer understands the impact of all these different things that they're talking about. And we're going to talk about some of the use cases that our MSPs actually go in and have conversations with. Yes, it's the traditional IT services that they want to go in and talk about. But for instance, maybe they're changing and understanding that, or recognizing that a company may have a problems with meetings or sentiment score across the business is actually lower, or working hours is not necessarily where a business needs to be in order to be optimized. And so the mature MSPs and the ones that are really kind of dictating where the industry is going are providing this level of information to their customers, opposed to just the traditional MSP that's really kind of like very simplistic in nature in terms of what they're actually going to kind of provide to their customers and the information that they're giving to them.
Okay. And so when you talk about this evidence building confidence, what kind of data do the executives really want to see? And how can the MSP help make that resonate at the business level?
Yeah, a business owner, and if we even kind of take a look at how we operated our business, a business owner is going to want to know a lot of different things, right? It could be, for instance, what is our average working hours right across our whole entire business month over month, right? Do we have, for instance, any kind of issues across certain types of departments? Or how many applications do we have running on the network today? Who's utilizing those applications? Are we getting an ROI out of them? And do we necessarily have some applications that are actually not being consumed? So maybe I'm looking for a cost savings, as I mentioned before. We take a look at shadow IT, we take a look about AI. I love to talk about shadow AI in terms of understanding what are the new AI solutions being installed on a network. And this is a massive hole in any kind of MSP strategy currently today, that they don't necessarily know what are the new AI tools that are being installed on the network. And with Produce8, you have the ability to see all of these new products and solutions. And so I think C-suite within an organization, a business owner of an SMB business that has, 20, 25 employees, these are the things that keep them up at night. Not necessarily, for instance, some of the other things that we typically talk about in the QBRs.
Okay, awesome. So these data superpowers sound super exciting. When the MSPs start bringing these insights out to their clients that they haven't seen before, what kind of reaction are they getting to it?
It's what I call the wow effect, right? Because they've never seen this stuff before, right? And as we get into the technology in a second, you'll start seeing like even a company like Produce8 that's not, huge and we don't have hundreds of employees, you start seeing the output in terms of all the different technologies that we're using to operate our business. And so, it gives you a different perspective in terms of what's happening. And our platform can be utilized, as we mentioned, like high level executive and data analytics on the whole entire business. I can use Produce8 from middle management layer in terms of I can see what's going on across my teams. And then personal people can actually use Produce8 as well. I always love to use the adage that it's like a Fitbit for work. It gives me insight in terms of how I operate. But overall, like when we kind of take a look at the reports that we deliver, that's the critical piece that I think Produce8 brings to the table. And so if we take a look at this, if we take a look at traditional typical QBRs on the left-hand side here, and then you kind of take a look at a little bit, you parlay that with Produce8. And what I don't want people to assume is that just go to your QBRs with Produce8. No, continue doing what you're doing because it's an important conversation, but bring the Produce8 conversation QBR strategy into that strategy session that you're having with your customers to start helping them understand, what's going on in your business and giving them different insights in terms of how they work, if that makes sense, Janice. And so we have probably 10, 11 of them, but 8 what I call really key kind of use cases that our partners will actually go and introduce to their customers. It could be application reporting, usage reporting that I talked about a couple of times today in terms of understanding what are the different apps, what are the top apps that we use as a business. Again, really important types of information that most businesses don't necessarily know. Most businesses typically have an idea what are all the different apps that we're paying for, but I can guarantee you that every business that we talk to can never answer the question which ones are actually heavily utilized across your business. Most businesses, what they're doing is they're making assumptions or they're guesstimating. And what Produce8 does is it takes that ability of you don't necessarily have to guess. You actually have this really profound data that you can take a look at. Software reclamation, again, what technologies are actually being used. And for instance, do we have maybe a team or a group that's not necessarily utilizing a piece of software? I used this analogy just the other day, a true analogy that we used here at Produce8, where we actually had a SaaS application. We had 10 licenses that we're using across our team. And when I asked my team in terms of who was using these applications, everybody told me that they needed that SaaS application that they were using. When I took a look at the data in Produce8, I actually found out that only 50% of the team was using it, and the other 5 licenses, nobody touched those licenses for 8 months. So when I came to the point where I had the ability to renew those licenses, Janice, I only needed to renew 5 of them. And so we saved a little bit of money. And that's the type of insights that you're going to get with Produce8. The other analogy, the first one that I gave you in terms of who needs all those licenses and 100% of the people saying yes, that's actually how everybody does it pretty much today. And so companies are typically spending a lot of money for unnecessary licenses. And so, great use case for MSPs to actually go out and have this conversation with their customers because that's strategy, that's strategic, that's something that will really engage that customer. And imagine if you get into an account where you save one of your customer thousands of dollars a year, that could be a customer for life because of something so different that you brought to the table that's not necessarily traditional. AI adoption and security, when we talk about security and governance as well, I think it's such an important piece, understanding not only the tools, right? Like, for instance, if we have a company that's buying into ChatGPT and how many licenses we have, that's great to know. From a strategy, you want to know that people are using it, right? So if you're an MSP providing, Microsoft Copilot or ChatGPT and installing these types of solutions into your environment, you want to be able to show your customers basically whether they're being utilized because again, What if you input some of these products out there and then nobody's using them, or you find out that, people aren't necessarily happy? So you can actually run reports within Produce8 to see exactly, for instance, what that sentiment is and the impact of those solutions that are in the environment. We get in terms of collaboration tools, working hours, meeting overloads, workforce analytics. These are all what I call core to our use case strategy that our MSPs are actually bringing out to their customers. So Janice, what do you think if right now I just take you really quickly and everybody into our technology? Um, Let me know if you can still see my screen.
Yeah, you're looking good.
Okay, cool. So really quickly for everyone, what I've done right here is as I've gone into Produce8, this is basically our dashboard. I can have this on my mobile application. I can have this on my desktop. This is a multi-tenancy that an MSP can actually deploy out to their customers through their RMM, deploy it in their environment. You can install it behind the scenes. You don't have to have a user kind of log into this, so you can capture information and data. But high level, really quickly, I'm just going to show you a couple of things here, Janice, is that very quickly I can see what are the top apps that we're using in our business, right? I can see that Minty right now is leading the way, right? Maybe it's our dev team, our operations team, our engineering team. They're all into this. I can see that, for instance, Zoom, for instance, is basically top app by users. I can see, for instance, whether things are increasing or decreasing. A lot of the times, like if I take a look at Zoom as an example, I can drill down into this to see, for instance, we can see by groups, I can see it by teams, I can have unlimited teams. So if I have larger organizations, I can see what's going on. I can take a look at it for my sales team as an example, and I can see whether, for instance, our calls are actually going up or actually going down, and I can correlate it to meetings that are taking place. If I didn't have Produce8, I'd be basically guesstimating all the time in terms of whether I assume things are getting improving or actually things are a little bit worse. So those are the types of things I'd like to look at, Janice. You start seeing things like we use Slack. We can see, for instance, all the different licenses that we have across Slack. And I can see, for instance, on average this month, we actually have 13 people that are logging into this. Maybe we have an opportunity, Janice, that we have to take a review and say, do we necessarily need to be paying for 27 licenses of Slack when only 13 people this month are actually utilizing it? And so it doesn't necessarily mean that if the MSP is going in and having the conversation with their customer about the data, it doesn't mean that really sometimes something has to happen. But it could be a conversation that the MSP can go in and add value to the customers to help them understand a lot better the costs associated with some of the technologies that they're using. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense. And we're no longer flying blind. We have access to real data, which lets us make informed, as you're saying, informed decisions on, yes, this looks good, or no, here, but here's the why, and here's how we can go solve it.
Absolutely. And, we're showing you real data. I'll just going to scroll through this quickly. As we go into this, like you start seeing like all kinds of different things that are installed on our network, right? And some of these we know about, some of these we don't know about. And so ideally what I want to do here is if I'm the MSP and I'm taking a look at this and I start seeing some of these new, whether it's an application that's been installed or some of these AI tools, I can start taking a look at it by categories, right? So I can take a look at this and say, okay, I know in terms of different products I know timelines, I know what tools we're using a little bit more within our business. I know that communication tools, as an example, are really big. But then if I want to dig down into AI solutions, right? So, a lot of businesses will say, well, we don't actually have any AI in our environment. Well, maybe you're not paying for something, but perhaps there's maybe 15 or 20 different AI solutions that have been installed. And so there's a security risk that you have associated with there. And maybe you have, for instance, somebody in your organization that's uploading uploading proprietary presentations with company data and financials that are in there, and nobody necessarily knows what's taking place because, as we know, not all of these applications are things that you install on the network that could be URLs that people are actually going to, logging in and submitting data and information. And so I also know that from an AI perspective, if I want my teams utilizing I can use Produce8 to give me better information to see, hey, listen, what is the trend across our organization? Are we using AI to our benefits? Or have I bought a bunch of ChatGPT licenses for 12 people in my organization and I only have two people using it? And then I can have that conversation with the group to understand why is it? Why aren't you guys utilizing the product? And so this is where we talk about the guesstimate of the work, right? Understanding what's going on in a business and really trying to get better, more strategic conversations in our QBR. You can take this information as we get into this, you can export it into an executive summary report. This executive summary report can actually be branded with your company information and logo. So the MSP's logo can actually go in here. And this is where they can actually go out and send this data that we actually just reviewed, Janice, in Produce8 in this amazing executive summary report. And you asked me the question a little bit before, what do people typically say when they see it? This, I believe, is it's that wow factor, right? Because it's so different, right? If I'm talking I just had a conversation with the CEO of a large organization the other day, and he said, like, I actually have no idea. We have offices across the country, and I have no idea what's going on in my business, right? He goes, at the end of the day, is it important for me to know whether people are working 8 hours a day or 6 hours a day? Yeah, it is because I want to know, for instance, do I have a bunch of people maybe that are burning out, that are working 10 hours a day? And I want to speak with the leader of that group to find out what do we need to do to solve that problem. If they didn't have a platform like Produce8, they wouldn't necessarily be able to figure it out. The other thing that people love is, hey, listen, like if we have meetings that are taking place in our business, right? What are these meetings actually costing us? And you know, the trends and the information that we're seeing out of the platform is, do we have a meetings problem? Is there a way that maybe we can change culture in our business? Or for instance, do we have too many people in meetings with only one or two people talking and there's a cost associated with that? Again, without this, you're just going to use the old adage that I'm sure that this meeting is costing us a lot of money. But with Produce8, you actually have better analytics in terms of how you work. And so the deliverable, like when an MSP goes in and brings this report, right? I would encourage them to take this report, email it out to their customers, let them have a look in terms of what it is. But then as part of the QBR, we can have that information. We can have those strategic conversations. We can complete a traditional QBR discussion around traditional IT services that we're doing. But now we can go in and start understanding what's going on in the business and what are all the different trends that we're seeing going across the business. This piece right here in terms of department overview, Janice, is another thing that people actually love is that, we can take a look at this. The MSPs can actually sit down, or our business owner can sit down with his team and do a review and do a quick assessment in terms of what's going on in the business in terms of working hours, our average sentiment across the business, meetings that we have, external versus internal, average intensity and focus are really, how is technology impacting that worker? Are they being distracted? So really interesting things in terms of what we see. Trending is a really important thing as well. So it's not always a particular point in time, but hey, listen, what's going on over the course of the year? Maybe the MSP, for instance, deployed Microsoft Copilot, and we noticed that working hours increased. And why would that be, right? If we threw in an AI agent in there, maybe it's because people don't necessarily know how to use Microsoft Copilot properly. And there's an opportunity in there for the MSP to actually give them a call and say, hey, listen, maybe we need to do a little bit more training. Or I can take a look at what I was just showing you here. I can take a look at sentiment and notice that my sales team sentiment is 3.4. And you want to know what? It's down a percentage point. What's going on? And so I can go in and I can be a little bit proactive with my team. And something that we actually realized, this month through the data is that we actually implemented a new technology for a sales team to use in the month of October. And one of the things I noticed is that the working hours of my sales team actually skyrocketed in the month of October. And it was a direct correlation to that technology that we implemented. If I didn't have Produce8, I would never have known this. And I was able to have a conversation with my sales team to kind of change course of action and direction in terms of how they were using the technology, but also shared with them that it was really important for them, that I didn't want them burning out and that I wanted them to take the proper necessarily breaks throughout the day so I can get the most out of them. So again, Janice, like such interesting, cool data that we're capturing out of Produce8 and MSPs going in and bringing these types of data and reports to their customers. From my perspective, is a real game changer in that discussion.
Yeah, it's absolutely phenomenal, Marco. And I think one of the things to highlight too is that this is really easy for our MSP partners to deploy. So the executive summary report is beautifully done for you and it provides all the details that you need to explain it. And I believe that the executive summary report in conjunction with the use cases that we've prepared for you really guides. We know how busy you are. And so this is about making it, we really believe in keeping things simple. So on our end, we've really focused on two key journeys, our team member journey so that they can best support you, and obviously your journey so we can best support you and keep that really easy and simple. And we get a lot of accolades for our partner support content and materials, and our team is always so excited to support you. Really take this program to the next level. And one of the things I also wanted to highlight when Marco was showing the executive summary report, what's really great is that each business starts to get baselines on what does normal look like for them. And then each month becomes so easy to review because it provides you a little commentary of up and down. And so okay, we're off our baseline now. What's the why? It's always about the why in life, right? And once
Yeah.
we understand that, we can go forth. So just a phenomenal offering to invigorate things with the QBR. It's so important to have that relationship with our customers. And to me, if I was back at Fully Managed running it, I would have this installed at each and every single customer purely for retention.
Yeah.
We do not want to be losing our customers. So retention, retention, retention. I mean, we spend a lot of time talking about new, but we want to have a customer for life mentality. And this is absolutely the way to do it. And we need to evolve. Every company evolves over time, and we have to push that envelope. This is the natural next evolution for MSPs who are becoming that next gen MSP, and they're going to stay in the game. This is what you need to be successful, and we've got the roadmap to help you do it. So great job, Marco, and thank you for walking us through that.
Yeah. Thank you, Janice. Yeah. Like to your last point, um, definitely, a great tool that like, we talked about it over and over today in terms of for your customers and driving that strategic strategy. There's also another play that we didn't talk about though, is that many MSPs are actually going out and trying to find new customers. And a lot of times, as they're going through that sales process, the customer's are already tied into a contract with an MSP. And so there might be 4 or 5 months in that agreement left before the MSP can actually try and win them over. Produce8 is actually a great solution that you can deliver to what I call like your non-MSP customers as a way to basically use for a new customer acquisition strategy. And so you can take Produce8, you can deploy to a non-managed services customer and give them the benefits and get a seat at the table that your MSP is not actually getting currently right now because they're not doing proper QBRs. And so there's a great opportunity here for new customer acquisition. And with Produce8, you can generate a nice recurring revenue for your business as well with our platform. And so Janice, thank you so much for the time and the questions today. As always, always enjoy it. I shared over here, we have basically the ability to download our playbook. So some of the use cases that we talked to you guys about today, you can use the QR code and you can download that playbook. And if you're interested in having more conversations with us, you can reach us at sales@produce8.com, and we would be more than happy to talk to you about our MSP platform and how we're working with MSPs. Um, that would be it for today, Janice. Aaron, maybe for you, our producer, if there's any questions, Janice and I would be more than happy to answer those.
Actually, Marco, we have a few questions for sure. So this one's a relatively simple one. Are you a SOC 2 Type 2 compliant? I think that's a very
Yeah,
good
we definitely are. So something that we're proud of. Yes.
And then what metrics are used to show working hours?
So I showed it a little bit in the demo. For instance, you have the ability to report on, for instance, the overall organization in terms of working hours. So everything that pretty much we have is aggregated data. If somebody is looking for the ability, for instance, to provide, workforce analytics based on teams, we actually have the ability to do that in our platform.
Excellent. We also had who did companies turn to when the vCIO or QBRs began to break down? Or are MSPs losing ground? Who are they losing them to? I think is to paraphrase the question.
You know what? I don't know if they're losing, I don't know if they're necessarily losing ground. For me, it's a missed opportunity. It's a missed opportunity to establish that strategic relationship with your customer. And it's a missed opportunity. Not only like we do see a direct correlation with increased monthly recurring revenue projects by deploying Produce8 because of the data that we're capturing and that we're finding in our report. So I would say that's the missed opportunity.
And in this one, another question, sort of along the same lines, but you mentioned AI usage and discovery. How often do you find MSPs are being asked for this right now, or is this kind of fresh ground?
I think it depends on who we talk to. The MSPs that are going to events and the events that we're at, this is something that's all that we hear about because I think the topic of conversation at events really is around, these new AI products that are in the industry. So the ones that are not necessarily going out to them are not necessarily the ones that are asking for it. But when we have the conversations with it, like they do understand that it's a concern, right? And so the customers are trying to understand the impact of AI. The MSPs are trying to show the value of AI, and Produce8 actually combines both of those things for you as a way to articulate and have that discussion with your customers.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. That's all we have so far today.
Awesome. Okay, Aaron, thank you very much for the questions. And everyone, thank you very much for joining us today. Janice, thank you very much. We always try and keep it as short as possible, try and get the most value in for everybody. We know everybody is extremely busy. Again, if you have any questions or there's anything that you'd like to learn more about, just send us an email at sales@produce8.com and we'll get all of your questions. And we'd love to have those conversations with you and look forward for more information on our next webinar where we're really going to talk about at the end of November, really the impact of AI on businesses and have more conversations around this. So thank you very much, Janice. You have a great day, and everybody have a great day and stay safe. Bye-bye.